Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. I'm Viola Lavi.
And I'm Tundra Abiola. Welcome back.
Our next guest is a health coach, public health expert, behavioral counselor, speaker, author, radio talk show host, and wellness communication specialist. She is the author of the book Drowning, a true story and practical guide to overcoming depression, and the host of Women's Red Table Talk, an engaging talk show and online platform for women to have a voice and get preferred solutions to peculiar issues we face. Adanze uses her expertise to help organizations get their employees to be the best they can be, holding seminars, group sessions, one-on-one counseling, one-on-one coaching sessions with organizations and individuals, which have helped many overcome the challenges that face and move people forward. I have to tell you, she does so much stuff, and I'm just happy to have her on the show. Welcome to the show, Ada. How are you?
Hi, fine, very well.
It's good to have you on the show.
I'm
not sure how you keep all those balls in the air, but I'm like, well done and kudos. And thank you for being here to talk about such an important issue, especially around our mental health and depression. Tell us a little bit first about your book and what prompted that book.
Okay, well, mental health, normally I talk about healthy living, nutrition, losing weight and all that. But I started to notice, or I started to pay more attention to the fact that a lot of people end up going into healthy living because they're actually depressed. That was how I actually found healthy living. I was depressed.
So let me just get this straight. People are trying to figure out, why is my energy low? Why am I feeling this way? And so people think like, oh, maybe if I change the way I'm eating.
Exactly.
And start working out.
Yeah, and start working out, And then they're doing all that, but they don't really understand where the problem is actually coming from. I knew what my problem, I knew where where it was starting from before I now got into healthy living proper, But I just realized that when in the course of dealing with clients, and then one of them was, I think one client said once that I didn't follow your diet plan because last night I was just thinking about my life and I ended up eating all sorts of things, and I eat now. It struck a chord because I remembered that there were times when I went through that exact time. Food was like, something about food that just makes you feel...
You self-medicate.
Really, exactly, If you're not into alcohol or drugs or stuff like that, you look for the next thing that will make you forget about that pain. But the pain returns after you finished eating, so to speak. You keep on looking for ways to soothe it somehow. But the thing is that a lot of people actually don't know that it's depression that they're actually really going through. So that's
what causes depression?
That's like
I like that big sigh. It's like,
it's a complex question. In some cases, nothing at all. Some people don't even know, But in other cases, it's, like a child, for example, who was maybe raped as a child or molested. You've gone through a traumatic situation, and your mind doesn't know how to handle it at that time. Typical example, there's a guy who read my book and said, he had lost his best friend. He went through depression for some years because he had lost his friend, who to him was like his all in all, his go-to person, his support, his encouragement. And then he now wanted to take his own life to join his friend. Yeah, in Nigerian, So I was like, well, this kind of stuff, this is not the kind of stuff that we, see. But those are the kind of things that people are going through, A typical example, even if you lose somebody very close to you, there comes a time where you have to stop. If, for example, really, really close to you, you're going to feel that way of, you're going to want to wallow. You're going to want to like constantly think about her all the time you spend together, everything you did together. And then suddenly from normal grief, it now goes into every day. You're thinking about, what am I even doing here? What kind of life is this? Think maybe even if she was ill, for example, and you went through all that with her, and then she now died. You want to blame God, you want to blame life, it keeps on getting, there's a word she used when she said insidious. It's very insidious. It's addictive, it's comforting in a way, but it kills you like slowly. Not in one day, it just slowly, the more you go deeper into it,
Yeah, we had a chat out there, and I was talking, and you've just sort of outlined that. How even the person suffering from depression might not know. They're self-medicating with food, but they haven't they're treating the symptoms but not the root cause.
Exactly.
How do people recognize that I have depression, or my friend is suffering from depression, or my child? What do we look out for? What are the symptoms that we're supposed
Before you even get to the symptoms, the typical thing about somebody going through depression is that you might not know what's wrong, but you know there's something wrong. You just really don't feel yourself. But you know
So
there's
you
something
as a
wrong.
person would
You
not
as a
feel yourself.
exactly.
Okay, you won't feel like your normal self.
You feel as if there's something wrong, but you can't really put your finger on what it is. Then the symptoms are like you don't want to get up, you don't want to get out of bed in the morning. You are constantly tired, and not just tired because you did stuff. As in, you can go to bed, sleep, wake up in the morning, and you are tired. You just don't want to. You just don't. You know, some people just push themselves through and just come out. Then there's low self-esteem. You don't feel as confident as you used to before. You don't feel as, you know, I can do that. I can do, you know, everything you might have been doing. You kind of like slow down. You become more...
So self-doubt.
Yes, self-doubt. Then there's this one of them, difficulty making decisions. You could see somebody who was probably a very decisive decision maker, and all of a sudden you're like, no, I don't think I should try it. Failure is another thing that leads to depression. Like, you know, before you fail, like when you're young, you feel the world is just your oyster. You can do anything you can, until you experience some failure. Then you're like, you know, and then some people's zone, it now develops into more. You now start to ask yourself so many questions that you cripple yourself. You don't want to go near that. You just don't want to try it because you don't want to fail. Then there's suicidal thoughts. Depression, someone asked me the question that what makes depression very important to me. It's not the statistics. There are statistics that say that over 300 million people are depressed, but it's not the statistics that are my issue. It's the fact that it's not like a physical illness. It's covered. So before you know it, that person has gone far. That same, you know, thoughts.
There was a report done earlier this year and calling it the silent killer. I mean, calling depression the silent killer because it can lead to so many other things. But I thought it was interesting that the World Bank conducted a study in Nigeria to find out how many people are at risk for depression. And I thought it was interesting that it was the World Bank, not the World Health and all these things. And so because there are real financial impacts when it comes to depression in a country, and they came up with 22% of Nigerians are going through chronic depression, not just depression, but chronic depression. And some of the things that you've just mentioned are some of the reasons. One of them is adverse events, economic, and then people that are, some of the people in these high conflict areas that we've been talking about are also going through chronic depression because of trauma.
Yes.
So so we know this. We know that depression is now an issue in our society. How do we begin to address it? What work do you do with people to address it?
I do a lot of speaking with organizations, like talking to, like on Wednesday, I'll be in a rental hotel talking to professionals about the productivity gap that mental illness can cause. Because one of the things that depression can cause is that the person becomes less productive at work, less productive in his or her relationships at the chronic stage, you know. You know, there are people who even still go on. They don't stop. The next thing you hear is that they're dead, you know. But they still go on like as if nothing is wrong. But there are also others who, because we're all different personality types, there are also others who, relating-wise, they just withdraw. They just become really withdrawn. The things they used to enjoy doing before, which is another symptom. Maybe you enjoyed going out with your girls before, watching films, you know, having a good time, and suddenly you just don't take interest in that anymore. There's also low sex drive, you know, that sometimes exhibits as, it exhibits as one of the symptoms. There's the weight gain. There's the other one, as this one, it's on top of my head. It's aches and pains. It actually begins to manifest as actual physical illness. People get pains in their neck, people get pains in their back, you know. But all these things, if you're experiencing 4 to 5 of these different symptoms and it's continuous for 2 weeks, you know, then you know that it's time to talk to somebody. You know, but mostly in Nigeria, I find that people can be in depression for years. Depression is something that it can be as bad as a lifelong struggle with it, because when you don't know what it is, you don't know what caused it, you don't know what your triggers are, you're just going to keep on stumbling in and out of it. You know, so some people are like, what life? What kind of life? But
you know what? Sometimes people are like, is it melancholy I'm feeling?
Yeah, so where is the line?
Like,
between a bad mood and mental illness?
everybody is going to feel, everybody doesn't have their, everybody
You're not up 24/7.
Yes, exactly. Everybody will have an off day once in a while. But these are like, your actual melancholy is just once in a while. When your melancholy be the first day, the second day, the third day, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Mine had gone on for 1.5 years.
The sense of melancholy.
1.5 years before I realized that it was depression. And I struggled with it another 1.5 years.
What was that bing moment where you were like, this is depression?
I think I said something to my husband. Normally I was like, because he likes to ask me, what's wrong with you? Are you okay? Then he wasn't always around. He was offshore and always coming in and going. And I don't like the question, what's wrong with you? Because I have to start explaining. And then I don't even know what's wrong with me, first of all. So I don't even know how to explain that. So I'm like, fine. And then I'm overly happy when he's around and all that. And then I think he said something. He mentioned something about somebody. And I just said, made a comment. And the comment was so negative. And he just looked at me like, what's wrong? There's something wrong with you. You don't normally, this is not your normal self. And then, okay, now started noticing a lot of things. You're not happy as you used to be. You're not this, you're not that. But so it has to be somebody really close to you who can tell when there's a difference, when you're just not yourself. Typical thing in Nigeria, we're fond of saying, how are you? But we don't really want to hear the rest of we just want to hear fine and then we move on, which is why a lot of people are still wallowing in it, because we don't actually want to hear how are you? Ideally, when somebody says they're depressed, because it's not a physical sickness, we're like, get over it.
It's a bad mood.
It's just a bad mood,
So so now you've given us some symptoms, you've given us some ways of figuring it out. What are actually some of the practical ways that you can start to work through depression? Because we also know, one of the things the data says, is that there are very few practitioners to help people. So these are doctors, these are psychologists and psychiatrists. We have we have one of the lowest ratio of people to professionals in Nigeria. So when you look at that, what can people do and how can we help each other?
Okay, so I think we can be more sensitive to each other. That's one step. And the beauty about things now is that the world is a global village. So the first things first, like what you would do if you're having some kind of hand pain. You immediately go to the internet and start, looking at stuff. Not that you should self-diagnose yourself as such, but start to find out information, Look at yourself. Be very self-aware. I teach people even in health, you have to be very self-aware of yourself. And like, this is not myself. Okay, I'm feeling, and then try to pinpoint what it is. When they said this, I felt, I'm feeling tired. Diagnose it like you would diagnose a physical illness. Take it as seriously as
how people will say, I think I have malaria.
Yes, it is that serious. Take it that serious. Now, because if we don't take it that serious, then we can't even start to say, okay, how are we going to help it? Because some forms of depression can be sorted out with just talk therapy. Somebody talk you through. How
did you get over your depression? So it took you a year and a half to figure out that you were depressed, right? And so once you sort of had this light bulb moment, what was the actual next step after that?
After that, I started to study, minus the fact that I'm a public health professional, I started to study about it. I started to look through all the symptoms. I started speaking to counselors, I didn't hold back.
So you went to counseling?
Yes, I went to counseling. And I didn't hold back my thoughts, no matter how crazy they were. I had this particular counselor who you could say anything to.
And this was a local counselor here?
Yes, in Nigeria, And you could say anything to, and he wouldn't look at you as if you're crazy. Like in my book, I say there's a
How did you find your counselor? Because I know people are watching here at home and they're going, I want to, because we want to make sure people leave watching today knowing what to do. And even if they feel that they see it in someone, they know what to do. How did you find a counselor?
It's so funny. He was, this particular man he's not on the internet or any of that stuff, but he's just known he's like a life coach, but not professional. He's not on Instagram making a whole lot of noise.
So he's not a psychiatrist, he's not a psychologist.
But he likes to handle people that go through difficult problems.
Okay, so you found that person.
I found that person. Okay. I think back then, there wasn't that much buzz about it on Instagram, so you couldn't, and then I didn't want to go to a full-fledged crazy, I didn't want to go to Yaba, for example, and go and start telling them things there, you know. So I wanted that kind of private counseling, and he was already known.
Which there's nothing wrong with going.
Which there's nothing wrong. I'm telling you, do what you have to do
Yes.
to get yourself, you know, sorted out and everything. But if you go on Instagram, for example, there's this other handle called. You can reach out to me. That's one on my Instagram handle.
Okay.
Then there's another handle called She Writes Woman.
Okay.
There's this lady called Hawa. I don't know her surname, but they have a safe space, especially for young people, to voice out how they're feeling. Now, correction is that depression. A lot of people might not be at that stage where they're killing themselves. At this particular stage, all they probably need is just somebody to talk to.
So then you found someone to talk to.
Yes.
And then when you started having those conversations, what started to happen?
I started to think more about the thoughts that were going in my head. Like I told him once that, okay, I think I need to leave this environment. I think I need to leave my husband, my kids, because I feel as if I'm making them sadder by being here. Those were the thoughts that were in my head, you know. And he was like, oh, okay, why do you think you need to leave? I think I'm the problem. And if the problem is removed, then there will be no problem. So he said, okay, so you want to run away. That was his own analysis of what it was. I was like, I didn't think I was running away. I just feel I just want to remove myself from the picture, you know. Says, if you run away, how do you solve you? Since you say you're the problem, right? So if you run away now, how do you solve you? So automatically, those kind of discussions kind of made me realize that, okay, that really is not the way to think about what you're thinking about. In a depressive person's head, his thoughts are not really, you know, coordinated to the point where he or she can help him or herself. But he needs to talk to somebody. There's another doctor called Dr. Sass. He appears on Sharing Life Issues with Chasby. He deals with a lot of these issues as well.
So really, at the end of the day, it's really important for people to find, for us to find a doctor that they can go and talk to, and that doctor could then recommend maybe a counselor later. But I think that it's important for people to talk to a doctor because some people are in a place where they do need medication. And I think there needs to be a very big conversation about medication so that we don't, last week we had a doctor on and she did tell us that there are some times that you do need medication to help you produce certain chemicals in the brain. And just like you said, you have to take this as serious as you would take malaria. And that's sort of how you have to approach it.
And then speaking about chemicals, there's certain actions that we take that actually release these chemicals because, as she said, there might be a chemical imbalance in the brain. So he or she might need medicine to revitalize that. But other than that, now you have to start taking exercise seriously. You have to start taking certain actions. Like there's a tip in my book, I talk about doing good deeds. Notice that when you do something good for someone, notice how it makes you feel, you know. So there's a kind of release in you that makes you feel good. I did something really nice. You have to begin to encourage those kind of feelings. We're not really a feeling nation, so to speak, but like if I give you a hug, if I've known you for years and I give you a hug, how does it make you feel? Oxytocin is released. Oxytocin is released when you hug somebody really emotionally, and that makes the person feel good. If you're listening to music, your favorite song, there's a feeling it generates, you know, which is why in Nigeria we have so many parties. We don't really know that a lot of people are dealing with all that pain. We just want to go to a party, that feeling, like that. But if you understand that, the power of that feeling, after you come out of the party, see how much of that feeling good that you can carry along with
What you're describing is some sort of cognitive behavioral therapy, but informally.
Exactly. Informally.
Just always being aware, how does this make me feel? I need to reproduce this, and this, I need less of that. So just being hyper self-conscious and knowing what triggers you.
Yes, exactly. Stay away from your triggers. There's some people that always want to pull you into their drama, you know, and if that person, no, it's true, and if that person is constantly, you know that drama is just not good for you, it doesn't bring out the best side of you, try as much as possible to just, stay away from that, because you might start reacting in a certain way. Like some people are given to outbursts, really irritable, and they will just flare up, and you'll be wondering, okay, what happened at them? So it's such things, you now know that, okay, that's a trigger, I need to stay away from that, Take time, go on vacation at some point, unplug at some point, find a way to reduce stress. We already have constant stress here, but you can't keep on going stress to stress to stress to stress. There must be a point where you stop and then you just take out time to
Can we talk a bit more about your book before you go?
Yes. So we're rounding up, but yeah, tell us a little bit about the book, where people can get it, and.
Okay. So actually, for now, you can slide into my DM.
Okay.
And then we'll send a copy to you.
Okay.
It's going to be on Amazon soon, and a lot of other places. We're planning a book launch and a lot of other things. But okay, the book is about it's called Drowning: A True Story and Practical Guide to Overcoming Depression.
And is it your true story or a collection of true stories?
It's my true story.
Okay.
It's my true story. So, but the way it's written in a way that with every chapter there's a takeaway point. So you know it's like there's describing the problem, and then there's giving you like solutions immediately with it, and then
give us an example of what a chapter says and maybe 2 or 3 takeaway points from it.
Okay. Like the first chapter, I narrate how I was nearly raped. You know, and how some things my housemaid, because of a housemaid, and certain things that were done at that point, you know, and in the takeaway of that chapter, I talk to parents. So I'm like, notice, you know, begin to observe your children, you know, because at that point, when it happened, I couldn't understand what was going on, and I couldn't talk to anyone, and I started to like go, you know,
into a shell.
Yeah, exactly. You know, so I was always very quiet. I was always, you know, and I'm sure if they had observed me at the time, I would be easily scared, or even seeing the figure or the person who nearly raped me could have instigated all kinds of maybe, you know, how a child would just
and that trauma gets embedded in.
You know.
All right, now you've got us excited about this book. We're going to have to take a look at it. Thank you so much for being here, and good luck with all the stuff you're doing on mental health. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's time now for a break. When we come back, our Rise News analyst and producer Charles Hohakoe will be joining us to review the top newspapers headlines from across the country. Stay with us.